We now like to turn to a crucially important topic. It's an anxiety for young people. You'll be able to return to funding amply, a source of anxiety for the young. The future of the planet, the IPCC, the climate change panel said we only have 3 years left to limit greenhouse gas emissions. Marine Le Pen, if you're elected president, what were the 2 measures you'll take in that?
Firstly, no more hypocrisy. It's hypocritical when you refuse to see that free trade-based economic models are responsible for much of greenhouse gas emissions. 50% actually in France. So we cannot seriously claim that we will tackle the problem while at the same time refusing to admit that imports account for 50% of greenhouse gas emissions. This is why I believe it makes no sense to import products that are manufactured 10,000 kilometers away. This model is killing the planet, which is why I do believe in local sourcing. I do believe in relocating activities and production. I think we should be able to produce the products and services that we use, produce them locally as close to consumers as possible. And we need to relocate. But this is a responsibility that the government should bear. And for that, we need economic patriotism. For example, we need to stop importing 50% of our fruit and veg when we are fully capable of producing them here and meet domestic demand. So via economic patriotism, we will make sure that local and regional authorities, the government, and the catering industry will undertake to buy organic foods. Well, French organic food, not foreign organic food, because their standards are not as good as ours. We need French-sourced organic food in cafeterias all across the country. That's absolutely key. When it comes to the environment, there's something that we don't often talk about. Animal welfare. Why? Because the free trade model has hurt animals very much. And when you're okay with supply lines in which animals are born in France and you transport them in trucks in terrible traveling conditions, hundreds of kilometers away, so they'll be fattened up somewhere else, and then they have to travel thousands of miles again so they can be slaughtered in a different place, this system makes no sense. It creates unemployment. It generates greenhouse gas emissions, 50%, like I said. And also, this hurts animal welfare. This is bad for industry because of unfair competition from abroad. Very often, the products that we import do not meet the standards that we have selected as a society. And this means unfair competition with French producers. So, before we talk about energy, which is absolutely key, obviously, we need to challenge our current economic system. And then there are energy choices that we need to make.
The same question for Emmanuel Macron. What are the 2 pledges that you commit to fight against climate change?
Well, very interesting to listen to you. And it just shows how inconsistent our whole discussion is. When you speak about calling into question free trade and our imports, look, the imports that are more of a problem, including in terms of commercial balance, is precisely, or balance of trade, is precisely oil and gas. And you were suggesting the largest possible subsidy to these because you were bringing down the VAT. So I'm just saying that your manifesto and your program just makes no sense. You were talking about a lasting VAT drop on oil and gas, which is, anyway. I think we have, therefore, a clear controversy here. You are climate-sceptic. That's pretty obvious. You said yourself that carbon neutrality at 2050, so basically the Paris Agreement, just can't happen. And I must say, I read and was struck once again by the IPCC report. I've done a number of things, but I think we want to go even faster. We've increased twofold the reduction in greenhouse gases over the last 5 years. I want to go even faster. So first things first, the Prime Minister would be in charge of this aspect, and we would have, he would be in charge, or the Prime Minister would be in charge of energy planning and of territorial planning. Second measure, supporting still the changes of production cycles and life cycles. So insulation of buildings. We managed to insulate 650,000 buildings last year. I want to move up to 750,000 a year. This is also cause for job creation. We also want to go on helping the French change cars, go to hybrid cars or e-cars manufactured here in France. There are battery factories in northern France, a part of the country that is very dear to you. And we also want to work in the farming sector to reduce also greenhouse gases, not by being prescriptive, but by investing.
Would you like to respond to that, Marine Le Pen?
Yes, I would like to respond. I'm not a climate change denier. Absolutely not. But I think you're a climate hypocrite, and maybe this is why people don't believe you when you say you're determined to resolve all of those problems. Let me tell you why, and I think they're right. You represent the worst, the punitive ecology. The measures that you have taken have been extremely brutal when it comes to the middle class and the working class. All of the measures you have taken, explaining to people that they're guilty for not buying an electric vehicle, even though they don't have the means to pay for it.
Yes, which is why I'm offering these leasing measures.
Because it's so expensive out of pocket. Explaining to them that they need to do this and they need to do that, even though they don't have the resources to do it. There's simply no way. Low emission zones, for example, there's a ban already, at least in part. For people who have older car models, they will be forbidden to drive into town. What happens if they need to go to hospital in that town? They won't be able to get to the hospital. So punitive ecology is something that creates suffering. It doesn't work. And it's always the same people who are hurt, who are being fleeced. And it is the people who don't have the resources to resolve those issues. So I completely disagree with that. Yes, of course, we need an ecological transition, obviously, but it needs to be staggered over time. It needs to be much slower than the pace that we are forcing upon the people of France. Secondly, you change gears. With regard to energy, for example, energy provides structure to the future of a country. It's important to be self-reliant in terms of energy, and also decarbonization is key. You've changed tack completely. Initially, you wanted to close down Fessenheim without any safety-related justification. Everybody said that there was no problem in terms of safety, but yet you wanted to close Fessenheim. You contemplated shutting down 14 nuclear reactors, and at the end of your term, you said, I got it wrong. You may have gotten wrong, but you got it wrong while you worked under François Hollande, which means that you have destabilized the nuclear industry, which needed to be supported, strengthened, which needed visibility when it comes to the future, because nuclear energy is good for decarbonization. It helps the country be self-reliant, and we need nuclear energy as a core aspect of our energy mix. So you decided to go for wind and solar. Wind farms, there's nothing worse. Ecologically, it's absurd. Economically, as well. It's a nuisance. It's bad for biodiversity. It's a choice that reduces property prices all around the wind turbine. And obviously, intermittency is a problem. When there's no wind, the wind turbine doesn't operate, does not generate power, which means that you have to offset that with coal-driven or gas-driven power plants.
You have power. Your 3 minutes lead. Emmanuel Macron, Marine Le Pen mentioned at the end of the day you agree with the policy on nuclear power. Big difference, however, regarding wind power in her program. Marine Le Pen wants to dismantle them, not build any new ones. You're in favor of wind farms, especially offshore wind farms, right?
Look, I mean, there's nothing on the environment in this.
There's a specific paper on the environment.
Yes, quite impressive indeed, which actually mentions what I just said. Anyway, I served as Minister of Economy and Finance. I did, and I must say so, I can't let you say what you just said, worked on the restructuring of the nuclear sector. We worked and saved with the EDF, the French electricity company, saved the industry and restructured it. Fessenheim, look, there'd been no investment since 2012. It was the oldest plant still up and running, and there'd been no investment since 2012. So, yes. And when you look at the problems we have with the current plants, what with the investments that I launched at the beginning of my term of office, clearly it didn't make sense to keep Fessenheim up and running. But compensation for the territories and the people. We have almost caught up on the delay and in the Flamanville power plant. And we had to explain how people might change places to go on working in electricity, and we managed to do so. So I did have a genuine strategy and have had over the last 5 years. And since 2018, I revisited the issue of nuclear energy and the reduction that had been planned earlier. And I asked the International Energy Agency and RTE to give me a report. And they show me that your policies are unpracticable. Quite simply because they can be no withdrawal from fossil fuel without going to nuclear energy. Now, nuclear power plants that we would be deciding upon now will only come into operation in 2035. So you can't just move from one to the other. You have to do both at the same time. I'm sorry to have to say it again, and that's what the report said, which is why I suggested and decided upon new tranches of the EPR power plants, 6 and then 8, to have an increase there, to drop a little bit on wind farms, but to switch to solar energy. I mean, small-scale sun farms is what people want. Why? Quite simply because those create jobs. Now, wind farms, you're saying that we shouldn't just stop their operation, but actually decommission them and dismantle them. And that costs a tremendous amount of money. And I think that public monies could be spent more effectively. When you have offshore wind farms, you actually create jobs. I was in Le Havre last week, and here in France, we're producing the wings and the entire infrastructure for these offshore wind turbines. Now, admittedly, you have to discuss with the fishermen, with with everyone, with the stakeholders, but we have to make sure that we don't make the mistakes of the past once again. We have to develop and deploy industries here, which is what I started doing over the last 5 years, from electricity and from batteries to
you
wind
won't
farms.
agree on this. You're running a bit late, but briefly, France.
When I hear about consulting with fishermen, I've met with them, and obviously there's a certain outcry among them because the whole fishery sector is going to be ruined. I think you want wind turbines all along the shoreline, except for maybe off the coast of Le Touquet,
I mean,
because
honestly,
there are
you can't
limits,
say
right? That is a
Please.
reality. I'm sorry to say that.
Please, come on.
Every wind turbine has been approved except
Planning hasn't even started.
off the coast
Look.
of Le Touquet. Dismantling wind turbines, that is approved when they are installed vis-a-vis
honestly,
the
come
Caisse
on.
de dépôt. And I always said I would initiate that dismantling effort. And 2,000 wind turbines are coming to the end of their service life. Dismantling is not paid for by the government.
So you won't be dismantling them then?
It's the operator that does the dismantling. And again, this is approved by the Caisse de dépôt. There is something that I want, however. Wind turbine that cause major nuisance to their neighborhood. And this is happening more and more. We will start dismantling those first, and then we will hold a referendum. We'll ask people how they feel about it. I know you don't like that, but I do. I like to ask people how they feel.
No, having local referenda is fine.
So I will ask the French whether or not they wish to dismantle wind turbines. Again, this is very costly for the population. This ruins our landscapes. The power is intermittent. We have to use gas and coal to make up the shortfall. We need to focus on nuclear as the core aspect of our energy mix. And hydrogen is also something that I believe in.
But how are you going to manufacture green hydrogen?
We will use nuclear to produce green hydrogen.
Yeah, so you're going to reduce renewables capacity. So you do that with nuclear energy for tomorrow because it's not geared up to manufacture hydrogen as it is today. It's there to keep us warm. So with your strategy, you won't be able to.
But don't you have a plan to develop nuclear?
But look, you won't manage at that in that timeline. You industry.
I will develop a plan the second my term begins. I'm not like you. I would not have shut down Fessenheim.
No, thank you for
Bearing in
reminding
mind
everyone. You
that this could
definitely are
mean
not the same as
problems
me.
in terms of power generation down the line. I will initiate the project while the power plant in Flamanville is ready to operate. And then we will start dismantling the turbines because this is something that the French want.
Look, hydrogen is not a source of energy.
I understand that, but we're talking about the energy mix.
Yeah, but no. Look, green or low pollution hydrogen.
For that, you need nuclear.
Yes, you need nuclear or renewables. Now, if you're putting an end to renewables, we'll have less electricity to go on, de facto. Even though we have the needs and the demand we have today. You're not explaining how we're not going to rely on Russian gas, for instance, because you're reducing the capacity, the production capacity.
I just said that I would do this gradually based on our capabilities.
Look, your new nuclear will not come into force before 2035. I mean, in Belfort, EDF is telling us it will come in 2035.
And what about Flamanville? Will it open in 2023?
Look, we've got this already on board. Look, your strategy doesn't fit.
Yes, my strategy does close the loop.